Welcome to It's All About the Questions, where learning to ask the right questions can help you achieve lifelong success. Now, here to help you ask all the right questions is award-winning author, international speaker, and business strategist, Laura Stewart.
Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone, and welcome to the show today. It is turning out to be a beautiful day in Florida. I know the folks in the Northeast are ready for a foot of snow. And who the heck knows what's going on with the weather or anything. But what I do know is I have a fantastic guest for you again today that was supposed to be on the show last week, in case you were wondering why there was no show last week. And I lost my internet. Oops, and I didn't hit record. So, hey, wonderful. My audio video guy is going to be like, what the hell happened, Laura, as he merges those two pieces again. I lost my internet for a solid week. It just kept going up and down and then was completely out. And Joel, being the kind man that he is, said, not a problem, Laura, we'll make it happen. So we're doing it at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific time today versus my usual 11 a.m. But we're just going to have fun. And this lovely man at the other side of the screen who has the words Bradley Friedman as his name.
Yes, because I'm on my daughter's computer. I told you it's crazy in the house today. So
I
grabbed my daughter's computer. My wife was using mine. Yeah.
All right. I am changing that to Joel. I know you're.
I'll answer to any name, actually. So.
Oh, this could be fun. We can create new names for
you. You can create names for me. I'd be more than happy.
And you were introduced to me by my dear, dear friend, Dina Moskowitz, who you guys have known forever.
Correct.
And I'm just so excited that you're here because I love TV. I love movies. I love all of that stuff. And the changing world of media and the changing face of media, I feel, has accelerated even more rapidly with COVID. And at the same time, it almost took a pause. And the industry fascinates me because I don't understand it. And you're in it. I mean, you're an executive producer. You're a writer. You know, I picture these writer rooms like the Dick Van Dyke Show, where the three of them were in their room bantering back and forth, or some of the SNL kind of writing rooms where there's 20 people in the room and they're just throwing stuff out there. And that has to completely have changed due to COVID.
Yeah. I mean, I guess on some level it has. I mean, the difference really is that it just becomes Zoom meetings. So, whatever those writer rooms are just Zoom writer rooms, if that's the direction that the show is going in. Meaning like, depending on what they're doing for COVID, some people are still going into the office. But it's the premise is the same. And basically it's everybody gets into a room, everybody throws the ideas around. They're assigned to different writers depending on who's writing, which episode or whatever. So if you have 10, you have 2 people working on one episode, 2 people working on a different episode, because you have to be able to leapfrog, because sometimes you're in production while the show is on the air. Like You're not shooting all of them. So, I mean, it's a little different now with Netflix and some of the other streaming services, because you're putting together everything. You're shooting an entire season and then people can binge watch. But for the shows that are on network, sometimes you need to leapfrog. So you may be doing 10, and while those are on the air, you're still shooting 10 more. So, I mean, that's kind of a little bit of the difference between the two.
I always thought that whoever's job it was to do continuity has to be the most obsessive, compulsive person in the world. Especially when, they're probably throwing page changes and this change. And that changes at them constantly, yet they have to just know.
Yeah.
What's wrong.
It's funny you say that, because it's continuity can literally, or the changes can literally happen while you're shooting. So you could literally be in front of a studio audience, recognize that the scene that you just did is not working, have your writers come over immediately and change whatever the lines are, go away for 10 minutes and then come back with a completely different setup, for the scene. And it's one of the reasons why when you go to a taping, it takes such a long time. A lot of times people are just changing things on the fly.
Wow. I've actually never been to a taping of a live show.
Mhm.
I was on Wonderama when I was a little kid.
Oh, my wife was on Wonderama. Yeah. Oh, wow. There's the connection.
I was a little go-go dancer because I was too
That's so
young to be
funny.
on the show, but
Right. Was it Bob McAllister? Was that
Bob
what it was?
McAllister.
Bob McAllister. Wow, that's reaching. I just reached.
Yeah,
I reached
and
way back
Birthday
in the time machine.
I was on Birthday House too.
Wow. Look at you.
Yeah, but it was such a different world back then
Yeah.
of TV and media and stuff like that. I mean, Joel, how did you get into this business? Because what I've known of you since we've gotten to talk is this highly creative person who has passion for what you do, but all at the same time, which I don't always get from some other producer people I've talked to, feels that it's important, even if it's reality TV versus scripted TV, to hold some level of authenticity to your work.
Correct. Well, how I got started really was I was in New York and I was freelancing in advertising, in copywriting, and my creative juices were basically, signed off to doing, these commercials that were 15, 30, or 60 seconds. And sometimes I would create something that I thought was really, really funny, or a character for a commercial, for an ad that I thought was funny. And the fact that I couldn't take it further, it was a one and done. It was a 15, 30, or 60, whatever, like I'm saying. And then what am I supposed to do with these characters or the joke or whatever it is that I've created? And so I decided that I think I wanted to open myself up more. So literally just picked myself up and came to California and really started over. I didn't go to advertising. I started as a production assistant. So I went from the advertising world and creating commercials to, basically lining garbage cans for the set and things like that, which was fine. I mean, it's you have to do it, and then moving my way up from there. And that's usually the way that you have to go about it. You got to put your time in. And I just got lucky. I was put on a show as a PA, but more of an office PA, as a set PA.
Okay.
And then while I was there, one of the producers fell ill. She got sick. They needed somebody to just kind of come in some of the segments that she was doing, and it was a reality show. They asked me if I could handle it. I said, I think I can. Give me a shot. And, the rest, I guess, is history, because from there, they just made me a segment producer. And then I was able to go get jobs as a segment producer. And then I started out as a writer. And so I was able to turn that into a writing job. And then so on, became producer, executive producer, and things like that. The executive producer, the producer actually thing came, I was working on a show, and they wanted to send me to Vegas as a writer to help the producers that were there. And what happened was when I said to the executive producer, I said, there's no way anybody's going to listen to me. I'm just a writer. I'm going to go down, they're going to make suggestions, and they're going to crap on me, because that's what they do to writers. I said, if you're going to send me, you have to give me some power. So I said, just call me a producer. Let everybody know I'm producer. I mean, I don't have to do anything producery. I'll do the writing still, but I need people to at least listen to me on some level if we're trying to get something done. And he said, yeah, sure. Okay. Made me a producer, got down there, and, the
way to leverage that. Such a total New Yorker. Yes.
I tried, but it was, but the reality is it's really true. There's a hierarchy that you have to listen to and follow on set. And, that was one of them. And I just knew, it's like, if you really want to get this done, if I come down there and I start saying things, they're going to ask me, who the hell are you? You're just a writer. We're the producers. And I felt that, in order to get what was needed, because that's why they were sending me there, things weren't working. I was like, well, you just really have to put it in those terms. And as I was saying, nobody told the director. So I got down there. He started screaming at me. And I said, just do me a favor. Just call the EP, the executive producer, and they'll square it all away. And they did. And so, that's how it came to be.
That's such an awesome story, because whether it's in the TV world, the movie world, or in the business world, there are times you need to say, look, you're asking me to do something. I know you may say that I can just act like I have the power, but there is this preconceived notion of hierarchy, sort of like the military, you know what I mean? And if you don't have that fake authority, you know, you need to have some credentials that set you apart, that say, yes, this is somebody to be listened to. And we all know that there are these other people, right? That no matter what role they're in, they are leaders, no matter what. But when you're on a movie set or a TV set or certain crisis business situations, you need that hierarchy. But now in this world of streaming media, that anybody with a camera and iPhone can create content, that sort of has that thrown the world that you live in and work in up in arms? I mean, has it completely changed the way you think about your everyday?
Yeah, good question. No, I don't. Personally, it hasn't changed anything for me. I love seeing people, using their creative minds to get things going. Because, again, no matter how old you get, you're not too old to learn. And there are so many things that are coming up behind me that when I see, kids, whatever, young adults putting together all this stuff or doing things that are streaming or on YouTube, it's different. It's new. And so I try to incorporate sometimes some of the things that I'm seeing in the things that I'm doing. So it hasn't really changed anything. It doesn't put anybody on notice. I mean, honestly, I just think there's enough room for everybody. And if, YouTube all of a sudden becomes really hot, which they are, then you start, maybe when you're making up ideas or thinking of things that maybe in the past you would have said, nah, I got to throw it away. There's maybe not enough of an audience or whatever. You can now start thinking in terms of, you know what, maybe I can bring it to YouTube. Maybe I can bring it to this streaming service that doesn't have the legs underneath them yet, but it'll give me an opportunity to put my creativity out there and put something out there. I mean, it's Seinfeld did Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee.
Right.
It was on, what was it, on Sparkle, whatever, I forgot, Snapple or, darn, I can't remember the name. Crackle, I think it was.
Oh, right, Crackle. I forgot about that one.
I think it was Crackle. Anyway, so, it was, he did it for a few years. It's really, really successful, for the clicks that he was getting. I mean, it was in the millions and millions. All of a sudden he's on Netflix now. It was a platform for him, and it went from there. And then all of a sudden they were like, okay, let's bring it over to someplace else. And I think there's a funny story behind it because he went with that show literally to every network. And this was coming off of Seinfeld. And nobody would buy it. He said,
really?
And he wasn't saying it in an egotistical way, but he was like, I just came off of one of the greatest sitcoms of all time, and they didn't trust me. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And he literally had to go to Crackle because nobody else would pick it up. And so it just goes to show, you're only as good as your last, I guess, or whatever, but he's bringing something in, and he's like, I'm Seinfeld, damn it. I know what I'm doing. Still, nobody would pick it up because they just looked at him like, oh, you're going to be in a car, drinking coffee. And so I just always found that really interesting that somebody of his ilk, couldn't even get something on the air.
I hear you say that, right? And you can tell by the fact I'm having trouble formulating the next question that I'm sort of blown away by that, because it just sort of says, who's doing the thinking somewhere along the way? And do they get so boxed in on ideas because it's always worked for so long? So let's not shake the apple cart. Like, it always seems like on a new season, there's 10 shows about the same thing, like all the SEAL team stuff, all the FBI shows, or the NCIS shows. They all came out at the same time. And then by the end of the season, some of them don't come back because they just weren't done really well. But did every network have the exact same thought at the exact same time? I mean, it's kind of interesting, which is where the YouTubes and some of these other shows and Crackle with Seinfeld, they were innovating.
Right. So you go and you pitch your shows to the networks, and you hope that when you're sitting there with the development people, that they get what you're talking about. But not all development people are creative. And again, none of this is a knock. It's just they may not have that, creative outlook on things. And so you're pitching people that don't have that ability to look past it. And they don't look at it and say, oh, okay, it's Seinfeld. They just, they're looking at the bottom line, maybe. They're looking at the dollar and they're like, okay, well, how am I going to get people interested in a comedian driving around in it's his hobby. He loves cars and he's having coffee with other comedians. They can't wrap their head around it. Whereas some executives and development people look at it and go, my God, it's Seinfeld. The guy knows comedy. He's been doing it for years. He's going to bring all of his fantastic friends, which is also very difficult to do on network, is get a lot of talent involved, but he can literally just pick up the phone and he gets whoever he wants.
Right.
He's able to see past that. And, that's the problem, with pitching shows. That's the problem with trying to create shows. You just never know what room you're walking into. Did the guy stub his toe this morning? Did the woman have a bad morning, whatever it is? And that's the reason why they're saying no. I've had pitches where I've gone in with a fully formed concept that I've been working on for 6 months. And literally within 3 minutes, they say, nah, do you have anything else? So you always have to have something behind it so that and that happened once. And literally I thought of an idea in the car. And I just thinking about it, and I was like, oh, well, then how about this? So the show that I was prepping for 6 months was a no-go. The show I thought about in the car on the ride over to the meeting, they picked up for a series. So
when you're thinking about this pitching, I mean, this is something for all of my listeners, whether they want to get on TV or turn their book to TV or have an idea for movies or whatever. I mean, it's sort of every business situation. You don't know what you're walking into when you're making a sales pitch, say.
Correct.
Or when, I'm about to interview you. I don't know if something happened just before we came on camera to throw you off, Right. As you and I started talking today, I told you that at 7:00 this morning, my dear friend Cheryl Liu had suddenly passed away, and I was on a Zoom funeral to Singapore, and I started crying. But you have to somehow find some core to help you. But you're in there pitching a lot, and you're being pitched. I mean, what would be your tip, your process for not letting that so throw you off your game that you go, bleh, We've all been there, that blah moment where you can't even think of a word to say. Right.
Well, you go in really, really prepared, and also prepared to know that there's a chance it's going to happen. So I will always walk in with 3 ideas. It just so happened that the one I thought in the car was the one that they bought. But you go in with many ideas, and you read the room. Sometimes you can walk into the room and you can read it right away, and you may shift into idea number 2 before you hit number 1. Even if they've known beforehand, you're going to pitch number 1. But you get used to it. You get used to when I go in, the most important thing for me is to make sure that I ask myself, what are the holes? What will they ask me that is going to be a hole? Because they want to say no. They really need to say no. I mean, the executives are judged on what they bring into the network. So if they do something poorly, they're going to get blamed. I think I once had mentioned this to you, is that, when you're the network likes buying things from people they know.
Right.
Because then they can go blame the talent. Oh, it's so-and-so, and they brought it in, they did this, so it's not me. Whereas if you come in and you're not as well known, they're not going to give you as much rope in terms of, whether we'll buy it or not.
Now, you've done scripted,
yes,
semi-scripted,
yes.
And is there anything really truly non-scripted out there in the world? And how do you? Is there a favorite medium of those that you like?
Is there anything that's non-scripted?
Because I personally think that every reality show in the world is scripted. So whether it's scripted in the editing room or wherever, it's scripted.
Correct. You have to have, on some level, some control over what's going on. Because if you're going to show up and you just think you're going to turn the cameras on, it just doesn't work that way. You have to know what storyline you want to go for, what's going on in the people's lives. So you pick that apart beforehand. You know what it is and what topics you're going to want to discuss. And then you get in there knowing full well that the people that you're shooting with are aware of what the storyline is going to be, for that week that you're shooting. Otherwise, you could literally be sitting there with your cameras on and you're paying crews and talent and you're not getting anything. So you have to ensure that you get it. Other shows, it's really deeply scripted in the sense you're going to say this, you're going to do that, and then you hope from that you get something else that comes out of it, depending on what show you're doing. I've worked on, documentaries, reality shows, which is for me the hardest thing to do because you're asking people that don't really act, or maybe they're going to be comfortable in front of the camera, but there are nuances that sometimes they have to be taught. So it's a little more difficult. I do like hidden camera and I do like prank if it's not malicious. It has to not be malicious for me. It has to be all about the funny.
So like the original Candid Camera with, what was it, Alan Funt?
Alan Funt, right. It has to be, for me, it's not a lot about telling somebody they won a lottery and then all of a sudden you say that you haven't. That's hurtful. For me, it's just about making a scenario funny and that the individual that comes into the scenario appreciates it as much as you do. That there may not be in on the joke, but you're not doing anything other than putting them in a good light, but it's funny. So I try to do that as much as I can. So I like that. I like it because it tests my ability to write, because with any hidden camera or prank, you can only go so far because the mark, as we call them, with the person that doesn't know, that's your punchline. So you're really just writing a lot of straight lines and hoping that the individual walks into it the way that you have planned, utilizing what you think human nature will be in order to get the desired effect. So, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but I find it the most challenging. I'll pat myself on the back when I'm like, yes, I knew they were going to do that. I had the script from them going down that way. Perfect. But you have to tell your actors that, you have to write 2 scenarios or 3 scenarios. If the mark goes down this road, because we still need a beginning, a middle, and an end, you have to follow them down that road. And we have to still know that we have to get to the middle and we have to get to the end so you can play, but we have to find a way to steer them back to what it is that we're trying to do.
So I would imagine in that sense, you would really need to have a lot of trust in the talent that you're having be the straight man, the setup man for everything. Because at times you can't pre-script how they need to try to bring the other person around, even if you've got that microphone in the ear saying, say this.
That is exactly right. That's why, a lot of times you'll see a lot of people working with the same people over and over again. I tend to do the same thing with actors or actresses that I know get it and know how to, so it's a shorthand. I don't have to worry. Yeah, I got enough to worry about when we're doing, let's say, a hidden camera or a prank show where, don't give it away. Be careful. What's this? So there's enough stress that I don't want to have to stress on whether or not my actor can get me or actress can get me to the place that I need to go, which is why we're pretty much rely on the same people. But when I find somebody that's, new and I love it. I just love finding new talent. So I get a kick out of it.
Where do you look for your new talent? Is it casting director?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, casting. I have a phenomenal casting director. She started in comedy. I think maybe in college after college, she learned with like Mike Nichols or something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I'm always in my stuff. I'm always looking for not just actors and actresses, but ones that can do improv, obviously, because they have to be able to think on a dime, and we can give them as much as we want to give them in terms of what's going on. But at the end of the day, they have to speak and they have to guide and they have to make it funny and stay in character. So
my favorite Mike Nichols was Spamalot on Broadway. Mm-hmm. And I just imagined him and, the folks from Monty Python, that putting together Spamalot, and the amazing cast that they had doing this show live. And I just went, I don't know how Mike Nichols held himself together to produce and such an amazing show. And that to me was, because I'm watching it from the audience and I'm almost peeing my pants because it was so brilliant. David Hyde Pierce, I mean, the amazing crew that was in it, the cast, and watching, some of the stuff that you've told me you've done, I had to rethink how I thought like reality TV, because I've always looked very down on it. Mm-hmm. Because I watch some of these people, like I remember the first year The Bachelorette came out.
Right.
And I never really watched it, but occasionally, you'd flip a channel, there's nothing else on, and you'd see it. And it just seems so real. The first season of The Apprentice, it seemed like they really were trying to get a job. And then the next seasons, it seemed like the people who were selected were trying to get seen. Mm-hmm. They didn't care about the outcome of the show. They cared about being found and discovered so they would get some other Hollywood job. And I struggle with that. And I see that even with people, like me. I'm now doing this show on camera. I was on broadcast radio for 5 years, right? It was just audio, struggling to be found, to get my show discovered, and now on video. And I sit here and I'm going, oh my God, I'm going to be on camera with Joel. The guy's the real deal, but I'm not looking to get, another show. But how do you reconcile that as a producer, as a writer, when these, I don't even know if you can call them actors, seem to try to almost subvert the integrity of the show?
Sure.
I hope that makes sense.
It does. First of all, you go with the flow. If you recognize that somebody is putting themselves first, or the reasons why they're there is different, then you just try to, finish shooting and then you go on to something else, knowing full well that you're going to have to fill a void. You could also fix a lot of things in editing. And that's where where the script stuff comes in, like you were talking about. If the scene or whatever we're shooting doesn't go well, we have to stop down and say, you know what, I think we need to do this again. We won't tell them that we think that you're, posturing in front of the camera. We'll say something more to the effect like, we need another one for safety. Let's try this. Let's go in this direction. That was fantastic. Now let's try this. But you're completely right. A lot of actors and actresses now are looking at, for many years now, as reality TV to either, kickstart their career, do something crazy that on the air that has a network notice them and give them something of their own. That's just the way that it works. You just have to have, when you go in, for me, when I go in, I'm already really, really well aware of what it is that I want from that day. Okay. So if I don't get what I want from that day, as we're shooting it, I know that I need to readjust. And maybe I'm going to do it the next day. I'm going to try to get something, or maybe I'll just reshoot a scene if I need to. But that's kind of how I go through it, because as I'm watching it, because it's reality show, literally your cameras are on all the time, I'm editing as I'm watching. Like I'm thinking, and I'll turn to somebody and I'll be like, mark this down, mark this down, mark this down. Because I know I want this, I need this, or I have an idea what I'm going to do with it. So, I try to stay one step ahead. If I'm not one step ahead, at least that I don't fall behind.
Is there a point where you have to draw the line, or that you can't even draw a line? There is like, I read an article about the most recent season of The Bachelor, where the Bachelorette or something was already engaged to somebody, but she was still doing the show. And it's like, how do you, I think, is that Mark Burnett? I don't follow the show.
Not Mark Burnett. Bachelor is Mike Fleiss.
Okay, Mike Fleiss. So, you look at that and then you go, what do you do? And of course, they took her off somehow and brought somebody else in. But how do you draw the line, Joel? I mean, to keep that, because your name is all over this, right?
When you're Mike Fleiss or Mark Burnett, where you have a lot of success under your belt, you can make sure that you draw the line pretty quickly into what needs to happen. You know, that's really what it is. I mean, it really boils down. And honestly, you just have to draw the line. I mean, I know it sounds silly, but there's lots of money behind this. And you have to pull them aside and you have to say, listen, this is what we need. This is what we have to do. And if not, eventually, if it becomes too difficult, you've heard people getting thrown off shows, they get thrown off the show, you know? At the end of the day, you want to make sure that it's successful somehow or another. So yeah, when it comes to talent, you hold the hammer as long as you can, meaning you don't slam it down. But if it gets completely out of the norm and it's affecting what's going on, then you need to do something about it. You know, I got brought on, I won't mention the show. I was brought onto a show where talent was acting up. And the talent wasn't showing up when everybody else was. Let's put it that way. Okay. So let's say our call time was 9 o'clock in the morning. They wouldn't show up until 1 o'clock.
Oh, wow. That's like huge.
Right. So what were they going to do? So they asked me if I wouldn't mind going on as a consultant and figuring it out. So it was easy for me. I wasn't going to convince these two people to show up because they thought they were bigger than the show. So all I did was I gave a call sheet out to them, to this talent, that said the normal amount of time, be there at 9. And I gave a call sheet to the rest of the crew that told them to show up at 12. So every day they thought they were showing up late. And actually, we were just getting started. So I didn't waste the money for 4 or 5 hours of not shooting because they still have to pay everybody anyway. And it was like, okay, if you're not going to show up, I found that every time they told them to show up at 9, it was more of a, there's no way I'm going to do it because you're telling me to do it. Okay. So I was like, okay, so here you go, 9 o'clock, knowing full well you have no issue with keeping everybody waiting. So everybody else will show up at 1 o'clock. And they never knew, and it was fine. And everything went fine. And we saved money. We were able to shoot whatever days we wanted. You know, it was like, and everybody knew. They were like, okay. I said, just show up at 12. They think it's, and they never came early. I mean, that's the weird thing. The call sheet was given to them to show up every day at 9 a.m. and they never showed up at 9. They always show up at 1 o'clock. So you play. Not
very professional.
No.
But a power trip.
Yeah, but you get that sometimes and you have to deal with it. And you can't, act and run around and, cause a stink and, have a tantrum. You just have to understand that some people deal with things that way. And if a major amount of what you're doing is relying on them, you have to come up with a plan that works, especially because the show was very successful. So especially if the show is successful, because if you come back to the network and you say, they wouldn't show up on time, they're like, well, figure it out. That's your job. There's nothing else you can do. So we tried it and it worked. So everybody gets to sleep later. Nobody had a problem. There wasn't like we were shooting until, midnight because of it. No, it was just, all right. So if they're not going to show up until this time, we'll just work them really hard from 1 o'clock until 5, 6, or 7 o'clock. And then it's fine. And we'll be done. So just changed our work day.
I love the way that you set that up, right? That you knew that you couldn't change this person, but you needed this person. It really wasn't the kind of thing that you can replace the talent in this case, or wanted to replace the talent, but you figured out the person and you were able to adjust accordingly. That says a lot about you and the crew around you, that they were just like, okay, we're going to go along with this and we're never going to tell the talent.
Correct.
Because if you did, then the talent probably would have shown up at 9 or
correct.
Thrown a hissy fit,
That's correct. I mean, I was able to benefit from the fact that they had shot already a few episodes. And so I was able to come in after the fact.
Okay.
So I looked over all the things that were going on and I said, okay, let's try this. Would I have done the same thing if we were there? I probably would have gone a few weeks trying to get them to show up at 9 or, or
Right.
whatever. But it was just so apparent that it was, they had burned through a few producers already that were pulling their hair out. And so it was like, well, I don't want to pull my hair out. I'm coming on as a consultant. I want to do my job. I want to get paid. I don't want to have any agita. But I will say that after that shoot, I quit smoking.
Oh, really?
So yeah, they made me, I was up to probably like that point they made me go through 2 packs a day just because of the stress that was involved in trying to keep, already kind of a rickety ship going. So as soon as I was done, I was like, okay, I'm done with them and I'm done with cigarettes. So I thank them for that.
When you and I were talking, I don't know, the first or second time we got on a call together, you said something that really stood out to me that sort of fits with what we were just talking about. You said, I want to produce something that has legs. That stood out to me so much because I feel like that represents who you are as a person, that you don't want to just do a pop culture reference kind of thing. You don't want to just insert into pop culture, that you want something like, okay, let's just use Sound of Music, right? Or, God, I could think of so many, Casablanca, these amazing things that have lasted, the Dick Van Dyke Show, Mary Tyler Moore,
right.
Carol Burnett, things that are just in our consciousness, no matter how old we are. What does that mean to you? And how do you see yourself creating that for yourself?
Something that has legs means that it's going to last for a while. If it lasts for a while and you really enjoy your characters, you have the ability then to kind of get deeper into what you want the characters to do. If it's a one and done, it's the same reason why for advertising was a 50, a 30, and a 60 second, and then you're done. If you do a pilot, and I've done lots of pilots where series weren't picked up, a lot of times you create these characters that you really, really love, and then they're gone. So, if you have legs, you're working regularly, and that's great. Creatively, you have the ability to keep on creating characters, interesting, entertaining, funny, whatever it is that you're going for, and they become part of what you're doing. It's exciting to wake up in the morning and to think, okay, what are we going to do today? I know we have the script. I know what we're doing. How is this going to develop? How is it? The greatest feeling that I have is if I write something and I sit down at a table read, or, we're just sitting down with the actors, even if it's a reality thing and we're writing stuff for pranking or whatever, and just watching how everything develops in the room. And then hearing, you write it on the page, but then hearing how the actors can take it to places that you didn't even realize, that becomes part of legs. It just becomes things that you, all of a sudden you're sitting there in your 3rd year and you're like, oh, I didn't realize we can go in that direction, or that actor could do that, or this character would do this, because that's also what the writing room is about. People will make suggestions. Well, what if this character decides, or, we decide to go in this direction with it, or we shake it up really immediately. So it really, for me, is important to have stuff that can last, for the reasons that you mentioned. I mean, listen, I'm not going to pretend like it's not nice to make money. The longer you go, the more that you, and in our industry, it goes away so fast. You can spend so much time on developing a show and you get 10 episodes on Netflix and then you're gone.
I hate that.
It sounds great that you can sell a show, but you want to go 3, 4, 5 years with something. It's stability. We're all looking for stability. And at the same time, if you can have stability and still produce creatively that fills you up, that's the key. And that's the legs for me. You want it to last. It's one of the reasons why I have a hard time pitching certain shows to niche networks, because.
What do you mean by niche network?
If I do a cooking show
or
a food show, I know there's going to be 6 or 7 others that are almost exactly like it. So really, it's just throw the names of the shows in a hat and see who gets canceled and who gets picked up. Okay. It's not stretching me. It's great, again, for the wallet and all that other good stuff, but it's not filling me up creatively. And that's an issue for me. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, you did. Yeah, answered that beautifully. And genre that that you've been working in is this whole reality idea of it. With a lot of those shows, the casts change, except for like, I don't know, I've been researching reality shows like The Real Housewives, the this, the that. How do you find story in those shows? Because it's really the story that keeps people coming back to Survivor, to The Bachelor, to The Amazing Race, or other reality shows. I mean, I'm a big fan of HGTV, right? But I don't want to know what happens behind the scene, because I can only imagine the houses don't really look as perfect as they look on camera when they're done. So how do you find the stories in those?
It's cast, beforehand. You sit down, if you want to call it the writer's room or with the producers, first you're casting people that are going to give you a good story. So it's not like it's just like, oh, okay, let's just turn the camera on to these people. You do a lot of research to find out who's going to work, what characters are going to work. And then once they tell you what they're about, once you find out that there's interesting points to what they do, who they're married to, their children, their lifestyle, you then know in what direction that you can go in. And so there's a lot of research that's done beforehand. And then when you go pitch a show like that, sometimes they've never met people like that before. You have to bring like a little sizzle tape in, a little something where they can, taste who the people are. And then you have to tell them, well, this one is having this, and this one's doing that, and this one's story is this, and this one was married and now divorced, but the husband still lives in the house, and da-da-da. I'm like, oh, wow, these are great story points. Can you shoot like 15 minutes for me so we can get just a taste of it? And you go and you shoot it, you bring it back to them, and they decide whether or not they want to pick it up for a pilot, pick it up for a series, and how it is. But a lot beforehand. You have to, who the characters are.
Have you ever been in a situation where who you thought somebody was not who they actually were when the cameras started rolling? Talk to me about
it's
that.
Not necessarily that. That's a great question, because that hits home with something. Again, won't mention names, but I found this comedy group, phenomenally funny sketch comedy group. Their lives outside of the sketch comedy was pretty interesting. And so I wanted to do a show where we would do semi-scripted about their lives, but then also incorporate a lot of the sketch comedy into it. And I remember I pitched it. 2 networks were interested. They were bidding. I was like, fantastic. I brought them into the room. They were so funny, unbelievable. And the first day on set, we turned the cameras on, and nothing.
Oh,
nothing. They were great in sketch. They were great in being able to go 2 to 5 minutes on a sketch, but they couldn't do scenes that took them from point A to point B to point with the same concept, following through for 22 minutes.
Wow.
And you could just see it without that sketch, without playing a character or something. They just couldn't perform. And we had a script, we had everything. It's just, they were so uncomfortable in their own skin in terms of, not doing it in a sketch way, because sketch is so different than acting. I mean, they're both the same thing, but there's just a different vibe involved. They could not find their way, and I thought, okay, maybe it's just this scene. No, it was pretty much every scene that we did, from then on. And they would complain like, oh, I'm feeling uncomfortable. And it was like, yeah, because you got to get out of your own head. You got to get out of that sketch. You got to get out of that notion that this is how you do it. It's not, beat, joke, beat, joke. We're going to derive the comedy from your conversation. And they couldn't do it. So yeah, it's a good question, because I'll never forget that day when the camera went on, and literally within 2 minutes, I was like, oh, I'm in a lot of trouble.
Thank God it wasn't live.
I am so glad it wasn't live. But the agita that came with that was, after knowing that and then having to figure out what to do for the next few days, was there a way to, and we couldn't, there was just no way to change it, because we needed them, and we weren't going to teach them how to act in a week, that bothers me. That bothers me that I didn't recognize that I should have recognized it, but I just assumed because they were doing sketch and they were on camera that they could handle all of this, and I was wrong.
I don't know how you could figure that out. I mean, is that something that you now know how to look for because of that?
Yeah.
So what do you look for?
I probably would have written something just to get a vibe for them in a room and said, let's do this. Just let's play the scene out.
Okay.
And then would have recognized right then and there that maybe we need to go in a different direction. But I assumed wrongfully that because their sketch was so good that they would be able to go and act. I mean, they act and sketch, so I figured it shouldn't be so hard. You know what it was? Also, they were playing themselves or some self-deprecating version of themselves. But still, it's still going to be some sort of a character. I just didn't realize then that the way that we would shoot it was just so much different than the way that they were accustomed to. And what they were accustomed to, they were really, really good at, but they weren't really, really good at anything else.
Mm. I had a guest on my show in one of the first seasons that was an amazing speaker, right? But as soon as I got them on the radio, and it was broadcast, right? But there was no video, they froze. I'm just on the phone with them and they froze. And I was so glad that like my first season, I used to ask my guests to give me like 7 questions about their topic. I rarely used them, but I felt it helped them sort of get their head in the game.
Totally.
And then if I got somebody who froze, I would throw them the question because I felt like they knew how to answer that one. And then maybe I can get them a little more comfortable because it wasn't like I could reach across the studio because my guests were from all over the world. I couldn't reach across my desk in the studio. I mean, how do you tell somebody on the phone, hey, you there, without embarrassing them?
Right.
So I guess it's the same kind of thing if I'm understanding the concepts.
Yeah.
Right?
It really is the same kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, totally. Listen, when I did so one of the prank shows that we did, the difference between a prank and hidden camera is hidden. Prank means the cameras are revealed. I like prank more than anything. Think of it in Borat terms or something like that. I like incorporating real people into the comedy and seeing what we get from that. But if I was doing a show that was like that, and we set up cameras in our interview room. Like we brought the people in to try to decide who, because it was going to be one person that we were going to prank over the course of an entire episode. So it was going to be a long form. So how would we know how they would react on camera? So we did an interview. Like they thought they were coming for a certain job interview. We told them that we needed to have the camera in the room. It was just on sticks so that they can, we could just see how they look because we had to send it, whatever, it was to a band. They had to see who it was. But we were able to see how they would react once the camera got turned on.
Okay.
And it always resonated with me, that always know beforehand. And this was actually before I even did it with that other group. That was just a different story. But we would always put them on camera first. Because why waste our time?
Right.
It's like, you go to weddings sometimes and the camera comes on at the table when you're supposed to say, hey, to the bride and groom. And you see people who are sitting at the table, like you were saying, and talking all the time. All of a sudden the camera comes on. They're under the table. They don't know what to say. I can't do that when I'm on a budget and at a time frame. Right. So, it's a good point. That's, we had to go and, we just figured out that this would be the best way to do it. And it was. I remember even shooting and the network executive came over to me and said, that person's an actor, right? I said, no, we just, if you build it, they'll come. So we just had to make sure that everything was in place and we knew exactly what we were getting when we went in there. So it worked out for us.
You're just such an inspiration, and I'm so grateful for Dina introducing us because, you just lifted my mood today, and I really want to thank you.
I'm so happy to hear that. I'm glad to hear that.
And it's always nice to hear that New York accent again.
You know what? When I get tired, it really comes out. So, it comes out when I'm tired.
Yeah, I was born in Brooklyn, raised in the Bronx for the first 3 years, and then Yonkers, and I don't have the accent like people. They go, "You're from the New York, like New York, not like upstate New York," and it just never happened. But hearing it just makes me feel home, even though I live in Florida now. It's just a nice feeling.
I get that. I miss New York. I certainly don't miss it for the weather. That's for sure.
Or the COVID, but you're in LA, which has COVID really bad.
Pre-COVID or post, however, but the energy is different. I mean, really, I stay up really late at night. Used to be, I could, get up in New York City, and go to a restaurant at 3:00 in the morning or a bar. Something is always open.
And get really good food too.
Yeah. It's always unbelievable. It wasn't like, I had to search or do whatever. It's just, there's always something going on in New York. Yeah. But again, the weather is just too much.
Yeah, they're about to get a foot of snow today.
Yeah. That's exactly right. I just saw that. And I'm sitting here and it's beautiful outside. I mean, a little coolish, but coolish to me now. Somebody from New York will be, what are you talking about?
Right.
Forget about it. This is unbelievable.
70 is cool. What are you talking about?
What, 68? What are you bitching about?
Joel, I want to give you an opportunity if you want to share how people can get in touch with you or anything that you're doing. What's next for you?
Oh, so what's next for me? I don't know. I'm on pins and needles because with COVID, it's been really difficult to get your shows out there or have people hear what you want. But I've been able to get stuff over to different networks and we've been waiting to hear. And that's the other thing. It's sometimes they reorganize. And so you gotta, whatever, it's just a whole thing. So, I'm on pins and needles. I got a whole bunch of shows that I'm waiting to hear on, but I'm not going to be able to do anything hear anything until the beginning of the year. Because once you get to Thanksgiving, the town completely shuts down from Thanksgiving until the beginning of the new year. So, I'm hoping I will definitely let you know if something pops. And if anybody want to get in touch with me, I have a long email. I'm more than happy to talk to anybody that has any questions. I always remember that when I was getting up there, I was starting to think of what it was that I wanted to do. And I met somebody who kind of guided me, and it really helped out a lot just to understand the different twists and turns. So I could certainly give you my email address.
That would be great. Go ahead, say it.
It's a long one. It's Joel, Joel, at mustard, MUSTERED, entertainment.me.
There it is. Say it one more time.
Joel at mustard.entertainment.me.
Okay, great. And I know you're on LinkedIn, so somebody.
And I'm on LinkedIn. I usually answer my emails as opposed to viewing LinkedIn. I'm always on my email. Okay. So if something comes up and says, "Oh, I heard you on the show," and blah blah blah, it's the easiest way to get in touch with me.
Awesome. Last thought you want to leave my listeners with?
Last thought. Just always, it's such a term is always used, but really push the envelope. There's really so much out there right now. Don't be afraid of it. Don't think that, if I haven't seen it, no one's going to buy it. Or if I haven't seen it, if somebody hasn't seen it, then you're probably on the right track because you've seen so much. So really, it's not like, run after your dream. It's just creatively. If you really think of something and you really think it's really, really good, don't be afraid of it. Just keep pushing it. Just keep pushing it because all you need is one. Just one person that sees it and understands it, and then it can change everything for you.
I would add to that always hold your center of who you are, because that's something I see in you. And with everything you've talked about today is you may push, you may try to sell something that you have going that you're trying to pitch. There may be something going on set, but I get that for you, holding that center of who you are and your integrity, no matter what you're pitching, is more important than this is the thing that everybody wants this year.
Agreed. Sometimes you have to do things that everybody wants.
Absolutely.
Right. But you should always have the things that they've never seen before, or things that you think are just unbelievable, and go after it. So I agree with you.
That's great. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being on the
pleasure.
show.
My pleasure. I had a great time. The questions were fantastic. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. And we'll let your daughter have her room back.
She's not getting it back. Going to make her wait. I've got peace and quiet for a few minutes. So,
all right. So just tell her that we're still on the air.
I'm going to tell her we're still
hang
on.
out there all you want.
Exactly right.
All right. Well, everybody, you know that for me, the joy of doing this show is to know that I'm introducing you to amazing people who can help you shift your perspectives, learn new things, because it's really, wisdom is meant to be shared. We don't have to recreate the wheel. Others have been there. And learning, to me, is a lifelong goal. I get so much out of talking to my guests, asking them questions, and I hope you do too. So please share out on social media here on the bottom. If you're watching this on the Facebook Live, please post your comments. And if there's a question to Joel and he's not hovering in social media, I will reach out to Joel and get the answer to your question, or you can email him at joel@mustardentertainment.me, mustardentertainment.me. Because really, in life, it's all about the questions. So what are you asking today? Have a great day, everyone.
You've been listening to It's All About the Questions, starring Laura Stewart. Connect with Laura at it'sallaboutthequestions.com and download a free workbook that will help you ask better questions starting today.